Hello, everybody, and welcome to my Chronic Life podcast, all about my different chronic illnesses: asthma, fibromyalgia, migraine, ADHD, whatever else I didn't remember at the time. I have a bunch. This is a platform to get information about chronic illnesses, get kind of an idea of what it's like to live with them, kind of a day in the life sort of a thing, just whatever I need to talk about relating to my chronic illnesses, how they affect me, how they affect others, just general information about them and specific to me information about them. I really just want this to be a podcast where people can feel less alone in their chronic illness journey, and they can get, sort of a chronic illness coach, if you will, and get help with their chronic illness through my podcast. And just, I want to be able to give help with what I've learned through my journey with it, from diagnosis to before I knew what was going on and all of that. So I will just share my story and talk about the struggles and the triumphs and all that good stuff. So this is my first episode, and for today, the topic is, I guess, just my story on how I found out and where it started and everything. So, I started having my illnesses as a child. I can remember migraines as young as 5 years old. I said my head hurts a lot, more than a little kid should have to say my head hurts. And they were so bad, and like just the way that they affect children would upset my stomach, and that is a symptom of them anyway, nausea and vomiting. So they did that worse back then than they do now, but they still cause it. And I had auras, although as a child I had no idea what it was. I just knew that it was making me feel funny when my head was hurting, and everything didn't look right when my head hurt. I also have fibromyalgia, which I've had symptoms of, I can remember, back into childhood. I believe the onset of that started in childhood from some falls, and I was prone to infections, pneumonia and bronchitis often, and I think that was the original trigger, was the injuries, and that the having bronchitis and pneumonia so much, as well as an abusive childhood, which trauma of any kind can sort of trigger it out, and lead to the symptoms. I've had ADHD as long as I can remember. I did grow up in the 80s, so they didn't really think at that time that girls had ADHD, because we often had the inattentive type and didn't display classic, in quotes, hyperactivity symptoms that boys did. They have since come to find out that there are multiple types of ADHD, and that they manifest different in different people. And one thing that can make them different is gender. And then I have asthma. I've had asthma since as long as I can remember. It was very hard to get diagnosed, as a lot of times I wasn't believed that I was having trouble breathing, and nobody really wanted to think it could be asthma, and my parents weren't really fond of taking their children to the doctor. I don't know if it was a money thing, because we got Medicaid, so it was like completely covered, but it, for my mom, I know, was a transportation thing, because we had to catch the bus back then. She didn't drive. So there was that. I had anxiety, PTSD, and what I now know to be bipolar, since I was a child as well, adolescent, like middle school. And the PTSD first started from childhood abuse, as I already mentioned. And it was awful, and I didn't know what it was then, but I do now. I didn't get a lot of help, because, like I said, the childhood environment was abusive and neglectful. And then else do I have? The anxiety, that's been around since forever, and it came from the environment that I grew up in. And I also have specific phobias along with the generalized anxiety disorder, one of which is emetophobia, otherwise known as vomit phobia. And so having migraines that made me vomit sometimes was anxiety provoking, to say the least. I also fear spiders, arachnophobia, heights, acrophobia, bridges, gyphyrophobia, and I forgot the one for any kind of bugs because I really had that one too. And I used to be agoraphobic, but I conquered that one. And it was hard, but it just was involving exposure. So, and then the thing that led me to my fibromyalgia diagnosis was a day at work. I worked in food service at the time. I made sandwiches. Don't really want to mention the name of the sandwich restaurant, but they were fresh made in front of people. And we had a customer come in, and I had a brand new coworker. It was our second day, and the customer was in a rush, apparently, and wanted her sandwich, and she was very, I guess, particular, or she was just kind of in a mood, and she kept getting angry with my brand new coworker. And it started with, she had to ask her bread more than once. She said it very strangely, so my coworker asked again, and that made the customer angry, and she started yelling, got someone else to make her sandwich, my other coworker. He was doing that. My brand new coworker went to run the cash register, which the angry customer did not want her help at all. So then she went to go help my boss. My boss was near the person making the angry customer's sandwich, and she got mad at that as well. And over the course of while she was in the store, she just kept getting angry and angry at everything. My boss ended up having to tell her to calm down. She will not be served and she will have to leave, which really pushed her over the edge. And she hit my boss, tried to snatch her sandwich, which fell on the floor. And then she proceeded to try to throw everything that was not nailed down. And even some things that were nailed down, because like the cash register is. And she tried, but it would not come up. And she threw, we had the bar stool chairs between like the sandwich making prep area and the customer line area so that they would social distance. She picked up 2 of those. She threw one, it landed on the soda cooler. Threw the other one, which smacked me right across my mid to lower back. My back has not been the same since, and that is what led me to the doctor that told me I have fibromyalgia, because I was trying to get help to get my back not to hurt and to be back to, whatever my normal is, which hasn't ever really been normal, but it was my normal. I was trying to get back there, and that is when I found out about fibromyalgia and started on a very long treatment journey, because unfortunately fibro is hard to treat, and they don't really know what actually causes it completely. It has so many different factors that are causes for it, so it's hard to figure out how to treat it. And also there are not blood tests really that much to help figure out how to treat it. So I've been working with that. I first had physical therapy and chiropractic and medication, which I still have medication. Chiropractic was a lifesaver. Physical therapy did help. And then we added massage and yoga, which I've never had a doctor prescribe a type of exercise before, but my rheumatologist did. And so we added yoga, and recently we've also added acupuncture and aqua therapy, which is like the physical therapy in the pool. So because water is extremely helpful. And what else do I have going on? The asthma, yeah, it took me until I was 18 to get diagnosed with that. And I just remember I was working, I believe I was working at a pizza place at the time, and it was so hot that day, and it was hot in the kitchen, like behind the cash register area because of the oven, and my asthma is triggered by heat. So I was getting hot, and the hotter I got, the less I could breathe, and I had to take, I didn't have an inhaler. I wasn't diagnosed at the time, but I needed one badly, and so I went to my doctor. Well, I went to the ER, and they gave me a nebulizer and got my breathing back together. I then went to my doctor and was formally diagnosed with asthma and given an inhaler, a maintenance inhaler, and a rescue inhaler, and everything. And I just realized, no, I wasn't working at the pizza place yet. I did have an asthma incident at the pizza place, but I was diagnosed before that, probably a year or two. Like I said, I was 18 when I was diagnosed, and I think I was working at the pizza place at 20. So, but I was, again, working or doing something and couldn't breathe, had an asthma attack. I remember that's what they told me it was at the urgent care, because that's where I went, to the urgent care. And at first they thought my lung was collapsed, and then they did x-rays and the x-ray didn't show a collapsed lung. And then that's when I got the asthma diagnosis and inhalers and everything. And by the time the pizza place incident happened, I had my inhalers changed to something different because the original one did not work. The maintenance one did not work, and I had it changed to something different. And then I did also have my rescue inhaler changed because I started taking generic medications at that point. And so the one that I originally was taking was not generic, so we switched me to that. That's where the asthma came in. And then the phobias, I don't know where they all developed. Spiders kind of came from my mom being scared of spiders, and as well with bees, because mom was terrified of them from being allergic to bees, and so she didn't want to get stung. And it kind of came to me too, because whatever mom is allergic to, I seem to be allergic to as well. And the bipolar disorder, for a long time I was actually diagnosed or misdiagnosed with depression. And I finally, at age 39, was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and then everything just kind of made sense. The doctor that I saw, I guess I was manic that day, and I'm not normally, for some reason I never really usually had appointments with my psychiatrists or whatever, therapists, while I was manic. I was usually depressed when I had appointments, and so they just kept diagnosing depression because they didn't see the mania side of it. And then this doctor, I, for once, had an appointment while I was manic, and she diagnosed me in literally like 2 minutes flat because I was so manic in her office that day. And just all my symptoms lined up like ducks in a row. So she said, yeah, it's definitely bipolar disorder. And I got my first medication, which I have returned to at this point, Lamictal, and it's basically pretty much of a godsend. And then I've had sort of some roller coasters with medication for all my stuff, really. And I also have sleep disorders, sleep apnea and insomnia. The sleep apnea was diagnosed in, I do believe, 2012 or 2013. And after long years of various doctors and various things trying to help my sleep, I finally got sleep study. And I slept very badly at the sleep study, and I had a lot of apneas, and they diagnosed the sleep apnea. They said, however, they didn't really hear me snore that day. or they didn't record me snoring. I don't know why, because apparently I do. It's just weird because sometimes you literally won't hear me snoring. And so the sleep apnea has been another journey. I've had a lot of sleep studies, like 4 of them. And now it's like my sleep apnea only acts up when there's not a test. So it's hard to get a CPAP machine right now. The insomnia has been there since I was a child. I've never been able to fall asleep very well. Even as an infant, I didn't fall asleep well. My mom would tell me stories about how I had to drive like around the block. Like my stepdad had to drive us around the block to put me to sleep in the car. Or she would have to take me for a walk in my stroller before I would fall asleep. Or, I would just cry and cry and cry until I finally fell asleep. It was very hard to get me to sleep, even as an infant. And even bedtime, as a younger child, it was ridiculous. I could never fall asleep. And my constant refrain was, but I'm not tired yet. So, as a teenager, I was actually diagnosed with the insomnia. As a teenager, that was my first diagnosis. And I don't remember, they gave me some kind of sleep aid. I don't recall the name of it. Might have just been some kind of over-the-counter thing. I can't remember. It was so long ago. And then at the age of 20, I was actually in the psych ward due to suicidal ideation, and it was very intrusive and wouldn't go away. So instead of an attempt, I went to the hospital. And so in the hospital, I was again diagnosed with insomnia. And at that point, they put me on Ambien. And I was also taking Prozac, antidepressant, because that was one of my first depression diagnoses. And Prozac really did kind of help. Only problem is it made me want to eat everything in my fridge. It increased my appetite quite a bit. And then, so that's where the journey of the insomnia, depression, bipolar, that anxiety, that whole treatment journey started. And I think I have touched on all of the conditions and where they kind of started at. It's basically all childhood. And in my next episode, I will get into sort of daily how the struggle is and everything, and more about, diagnosis or more about treatments and that kind of thing, and just what's helping, what's not. Just my sort of daily life of living with it. Thanks for listening, and I will see you next time, everybody.